It's funny because when you're Latino, you understand what the microaggressions are towards being Latino. So like if somebody says certain things about, no, but where are you really from?
Right.
Like that kind of stuff your body gets used to. And as violent as that is, like you develop an armor to what that is. But then you forget the microaggressions that you yourself have learned about
Mhm.
other cultures, about other
Of
people who do
course.
not look like you. And when you realize that you can be a perpetrator while also at the same time a victim of this exact same thing, that's a
Mhm.
tough pill to swallow.
It is a tough pill to swallow. It is a tough pill to swallow to realize, oh, I'm not just because I'm not like a white American suburban kid doesn't mean that I'm immune to this. Doesn't mean that I'm exempt from the horrors that we have to dismantle. I'm not from the States. I've been here for a little over a decade, so I didn't grow up here. My U.S. history is subpar because of it. I think this moment just forces you to like okay, well, okay, but what about where you're from? What does this look where you're from?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ripple effects of this very productive conversation.
I think the thing that I've appreciated is a lot of people who I admire, a lot of people whose work that I follow have been very vocal about kind of confronting this, right? And
Mhm.
bringing these conversations to back home. Are these kind of conversations that you're able to have with family back in El Salvador, or is it just
Yeah,
something that,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very lucky in many ways. I come from a very progressive, very liberal household, which is a bit unusual in a country like El Salvador that is very conservative. My parents are very, very smart, very kind people. So these conversations they're not like, some friends right here that have to talk to the like really rich white Southern family. I have it, these conversations come easier to us a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it really makes you think. I remember driving around with some friends in El Salvador, and everyone is scared of the police in El Salvador because they're like incredibly corrupt and they're horrible.
Mhm.
And we were driving around, and this friend made a joke about how lucky we were that I was in the passenger seat as opposed to like because that was going to perhaps make them not stop us. Because
Interesting.
my friend is another Salvadorian with darker skin, and their other friend in the back was also darker
Mhm.
skin. But as you can see, I'm pretty pale. I inherited my father's complexion as opposed to my mother's complexion. And yeah, that's one of those moments where you're like, oh shit, like oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. There are things that we receive that just because I didn't pay for to look like I do, I didn't take it away from anyone else, but we all got to take a look at what have we benefited from.
It's so weird, like confronting, and I think that's part of the next phase of this conversation, right? Especially among Latinos, especially about
Yeah.
anybody who is not African American, is do we understand our own privileges, especially when it comes to
No.
this quote unquote passing privilege of if you have lighter skin, which I agree that I have lighter skin than most other, especially Mexican Americans,
Mm-hmm.
where I come from. And so what does that award me? What does that do to me? And am I able to make the difference between when it works in my favor and when it doesn't? And that's a weird thing to kind of have to recognize.
Yeah, and then the other step is like, recognizing where you have quote unquote lucked out in a really disgusting system, and then asking yourself, okay, well, if I've lucked out in these ways, if life has been easier to me in these ways, what can I do to help others who haven't had it as easy? When I came to the States, it was not easy for me to come to the States. My family has always been so broke. They're so my parents are like comedically bad at making money. They're very
Oh.
they're both talented. They're both incredibly talented. They're college educated, which I mean, being college educated in a city like San Salvador, that means that you are above and beyond most people already.
Hmm.
We are very much middle class, which when you factor in the wealth divide in a city like El Salvador, that already puts you above and beyond most people. But you know, there were financial struggles. There was very much like putting things back at the supermarket because you know, it's too expensive, and like the cars were never working. Both of my parents have cars that are like older than I am, and then like trying to come to the States was just like, dear God, why is he picking the most expensive city in the most expensive country in the world to go do this like writing thing, and to like the most difficult country to immigrate to. And you know, and I came because of scholarships. I came because other family members chipped in. I came, you know, it was a community effort to get me to come here. And then when I did, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a straight A student, because being a straight A student is going to mean that I can stay in the US when I graduate. And it's like, of course not, you idiot. So I graduated.
Immigration's going to look at your report.
Like immigration, like,
okay,
yeah, like
stays.
Homeland Security is going to see that I got like a perfect GPA in my liberal arts college, and is going to care. And I graduated, and then that was hard because then I had to find a sponsor for a work visa. And that was extremely difficult. And then like I had to pay for the work visa, and that is, you know, when you have $40 to have to put out $6,000 to hopefully stay in the States. It's very hard. There are a lot of sacrifices, and I was very resentful of my American peers who could just graduate and take on a bartending job or take on like any job and sort of like float by. And I was just like, well, I'm not legally allowed to do that. And then you enter this like Kafkaesque maze, and all you can think about is just like how hard it is for you, how hard it is for you, how hard it is for you. And there's a resentment that comes with it. And then I got a work visa, again, another community effort. And then I got an artist visa after friends chipped in on a GoFundMe to get me to get an artist visa. And then when I finally felt that I was no longer swimming for my life, that I was no longer living every day just to make sure that I could stay here another day, then, you know, you can finally breathe, and you look back at everything that you did, and you realize, in comparison, that was the easy road. In comparison, this was really tough, and it nearly broke me. But I came here on a plane. I walked through immigration. I went to a nice college that gave me access to what ended up becoming my sponsor. And yeah, I had it harder than everyone immediately around me, but so much easier than most of the world, so much easier than most of the country where I come from. Now that I have a nice apartment, I when I go to the supermarket, I don't worry about whether or not the debit card is going to go through. There's a part of being not from here that will always make you feel like you're going to get deported at any moment. But that fear is now illogical, is not as reasonable. So you never know. But
you're like, I still look over my back, but not that often.
Yeah. But now that I can have the time to make art and have the time to do the things that I love, now is the time to sort of look back and look at the people who are still drowning, I think. So I'm very much in that moment in my life where I don't know. I mean, in my agenda, fix poverty can't be the thing, because then I'll never win. but how do I, in the ways that I can, make it a little easier for people like me? And I think that that is the question that these past 2 weeks of the Black Lives Matter movement pushed me towards. It is obviously not a Black Lives Matter issue, but it is connected in the same thing of fighting systemic inequality and oppression. You know,
all that stuff.
Like, what do we do?
I'm curious, like, because, and I highly recommend, again, for our listeners to go to HBO so you can watch, first off, My Favorite Shapes, which is the 1-hour comedy special that Julio put out last year. But like all of the voices that you just talked about, like the voice of, you know, how hard it was to come here, how difficult it was to navigate the immigration system, being able to financially support yourself and have people kind of pick you up in these moments of what could be despair.
Yeah.
Like, is that person with you on a stage? Like when you do this, it's a highly produced, like the production value for My Favorite Shapes is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And so like, are you on that stage thinking, God damn, like I fucking did it. I did it.
No. No, I don't think I'm ever thinking, God damn it, I did it. It's never a victory lap, really.
Interesting. Why
Uh,
not?
I don't know. There's so much I have left to do.
That's fair.
So I'm incredibly proud of both was Spookies and My Favorite Shapes, and I really, really, really love those projects, and I'm incredibly proud of them. But when I was doing them, I definitely wasn't thinking like I did it. I think I felt maybe like I am doing it, and the stairs aren't the right height, so who knows if the shoe is gonna go through. Like, I am doing it, but HBO couldn't get me a pond for the stage, so we'll see how this we'll see this flies. Yeah, that's sort of the attitude I think for everything. Oh, never satisfied. Um,
I can appreciate that. I mean, I think there's something about the Latino spirit that always has like the ganas within us. And you're like, you know what, there's always going to be something else that, and especially when you realize how hard it was to even get to that point, you never
yeah.
want to make it seem like that point's the end point.
Yeah, never. And you know, I left El Salvador because it was not the place for me for many reasons. But it is in these past years that I've really thought like, oh, you know, like what's the Salvadorian trait that I have, I think, is like scrappiness. Is the sort of like no, it needs to get done because if it doesn't get done, it's like there's no other choice.
Yeah.
And that it's like, you know, I've moved mattresses on the subway. I've just like dragged the surface that I was going to sleep on down the subway. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, this is a cultural thing. The fact that I'm like not fazed by that.
Mm-hmm.